Hello my beautiful friends, and welcome back to our channel and today's video where we're going to be talking about the things that I've been doing wrong, and I am doing wrong, so that you may learn from them and hopefully do a bit better. There are three important concepts that I want to offer to you guys today in this video. The first one being Parkinson's law. The second, how your fear can override your greater logic. And the third, the critical difference between intellectually knowing something and actually knowing from executing it. There is a massive chiasm that exists between the intellectual knowing, the book knowledge, and the knowing from doing, the knowing that comes from your personal experience. Three topics, one story, let's get started. So I've noticed I've been having this recurring familiar experience where my fiance has been reminding me more than once over the last 6 months or so, with all of the patience and kindness that it takes to remind someone many times that I should be completing or setting a timer, a time limit, or a due date for these important tasks, for whatever I have on my plate to be done. And what he is reminding me of here is the implication of Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states that the work will expand to fill the space that a person has allocated for it. Meaning the task will be completed in whatever time you allow for it to be completed in. And I think this is why a lot of us have great success and a lot of productivity in formal schooling, whether it's those initial blocks of schooling or going on to any higher education. Those due dates, those constrained time periods to get our work done and produce some work really support us in this way, because they're allowing us to prioritize, delegate our time, and move forwards, get a lot done in lots of different spaces. And I think this is why a lot of us struggle when we go out on our own, because we'll often neglect the importance of a due date or a constrained time limit in favor of having as much time as you need or you want. So we favor producing the best work over producing it in a certain amount of time or by a certain time. If you are a perfectionist or a person with perfectionism programming, as I like to say, I highly recommend you consider Parkinson's law and how it affects you and your work. Because a person with perfectionism programming will often have a limitless definition for what is good enough. And so there is no stop to our work if this is our number one priority. We're never done. We never get to reach that best version of work. We never put anything out into the world, or when we do it so much more slowly than it needed to be. And we miss out on moving on to the next thing. A person with perfectionism programming will heavily benefit from using Parkinson's law to their advantage and putting some time constraints on their work. And this is common, right? New situations, new circumstances, new contexts will often have you thinking in different ways, and sometimes you don't always carry over the skills and lessons from the last situation unless you purposely make that happen. So that's what he was doing here. He was trying to remind me of what I believe anyway. He could see that I wasn't acting in my usual values or even in my best interest, unbeknownst to me at the time. So here I want to talk about the second concept, how my fear was influencing my decisions here and overriding that greater logic from my higher brain, my intellectual brain. When he called me out on not using Parkinson's law to my advantage here and not following those principles, I didn't initially feel a sense of relief and gratitude. Now I have a solution that make me so much more productive and give me better outcomes, right? My initial feeling in response to that was defensiveness. And here's why. All of these thoughts came up that were otherwise running under the radar that I wasn't noticing, that were all my objections, my excuses for why I didn't want to apply this principle of Parkinson's law in this moment. And this is why you've got to have great self-awareness and be onto your brain. Part of me wholeheartedly believes and vouches for Parkinson's law. But in this moment, in this context, at this time, there was a stronger part of me that was rejecting it. Only when my fiance brought up this principle again did I realize that I was actually making a decision. For that, it didn't feel like I was making a decision. It felt like this was the only way. I didn't sit down and logically think, for this project, will I use Parkinson's law? Yes, no. I just started doing the project. Sure, I made plans for the project, step-by-step specifics and so on, but within that plan, I either completely omitted to think about Parkinson's law, or My brain quickly rejected its relevance in this situation. Now that my fiance brought Parkinson's law back to my conscious awareness, I have an opportunity to make a decision. But first came all the objections. So he points out that I'm not using Parkinson's law. And what I noticed happen was this defensiveness. And from this defensiveness, I noticed I was about to offer all of my explanations, excuses, and objections for why Parkinson's law won't help me in this situation. With my experience coaching, I know that defensiveness is a red flag. It's a cue to look for what's going on in my brain. Defensiveness is not a place that I probably ever want to act from. And not only that, but what I've learned over time is that the thoughts that produce the defensiveness are usually something that I want to have a look at, and often thoughts I don't actually support or agree with. So I've got the cue of defensiveness and I want to say, I can't use that here. And what are my thoughts behind that? My brain says, but I want to do a great job. And that takes extra time. The more time, the better. Another thought, but this is a new thing that I've never done. I'm creating this from scratch. So how will I know how much time that I need? How can I even make that plan to complete it in a certain time? Another thought, it's this new topic. I need to do so much research. I won't know how much research to do or how many other topics stem out from this core topic. I don't want to set a time limit for that and come out with a half-baked understanding of the topic. And I don't want to stop early and miss out on discovering this amazing, impactful piece of research that could change everything. Another thought, well, I need to be in a great state of mind to be able to do great work. I need to feel like doing it, you know? It's not like I'm just doing algebra. I need to feel a certain way and be in a certain state of mind, and I can't just switch that on and off. On one hand, I can't plan for it. So how can I make plans about when I'm going to complete this task or how long it's going to take? And on the other hand, if I'm not in the right state of mind or really feeling in the right mode for it, then the work will take so much longer and it won't be as good of an output of work. How can I plan for that? How can I put time restraints on all of these objections? So as I did the work to write these down, and again as I say them out loud, it's very obvious to me that these are all thought errors. All of those objections are not the full story. They're definitely not full stop, red light, stop objections. Definitely you cannot use Parkinson's law here. Not at all. However, without explicitly examining them like that, and without the prompt from my fiance to actually hear those excuses that were just sitting under the radar, not in my consciousness, sitting in my subconsciousness or pre-consciousness, then I miss out. I don't even have the opportunity to make a decision with all the information. At the moment, I'm making a decision by default from these subconscious, unexamined thoughts. And in my opinion, my fiance was right. It's definitely not the best decision to just throw out Parkinson's law here and just let myself have all the time in the world, no matter how important or new or special it is to me. So the point that I really want to make in this second part of the video is showing you that yes, on one hand, of course, if the thoughts are in my subconscious and not reasoned with in my consciousness, then they are controlling my behavior. But also when he brought them to my awareness and they did come to my consciousness, I still wanted to defend them. I still didn't want to, even after seeing these thoughts, change what I was doing and start implementing the thing that the more logical part of me, the future self version of me would have wanted me to do. And the reason is that these objections that I have are all related to threats to me and fears. So if I rephrase them in different ways, they're revealing things that I'm actually worried about here. I'm worried that I'm not going to produce a higher quality enough work. I'm worried that the work is not going to be impactful. I'm worried that if I set a time constraint for this work and then fill the rest of my time with other things, I'm not going to have enough time left over to feed back into this work that I believe needs extra time. I'm worried that if I don't produce impactful, excellent work, then it wasn't worth doing anything at all. And all the time I did spend was wasted. I'm worried about wasting my time. I'm worried about missing out on stumbling across that piece of research that would change everything and change the way that I see and communicate things. I'm worried that I'm missing out on something that would save me so much time. A sense of fear will override logic any day. And that's really what fear is meant to do. Fear is meant to be this fast reaction to compel you into motion. Fear is supposed to signal a threat, something that can potentially harm you. So your body wants to act quickly on that. Your body doesn't want to sit and ponder and weigh up the reasoning either way. And a problem is that we need to be really aware of what things we perceive as a threat these days. We live a overall very safe life. And so our threshold for seeing or interpreting a threat is different now. Our potential threats to not our physical or psychological safety, but they can be threats to things like our perfectionistic constructs, our social status, money, for example. Not threats that are necessarily worthwhile dropping all logic for and acting on in the moment. However, in coaching, we do a bit of that sort of what's stereotyped as being therapy, where you go back and look into why you think the way you think and how you've developed these patterns in your life. Asking those why questions instead of what next. And when I notice I have fears in situations, when I feel like I'm emotionally reacting to a situation and that's overriding my logic, this is when I think it's worthwhile to go back and try and disempower those fears. I always say that logic is great and we can focus and try and be as practical as we like. But if you're genuinely concerned for your safety, then your body and your brain is not gonna let you, thank goodness, forget about that threat. If you're lying in bed and you think there's a monster under the bed, if I just come in and say, Pat, there's no monster there, go to sleep. As long as you believe there's a threat to your safety under your bed, you are not gonna have a wink of sleep that night. You cannot just override that with logic. You're gonna have to climb out of bed, look with your own eyes, and see that there's no monster there. Perhaps then you'll get back to sleep. So instead of just trying to think better thoughts or putting some comfort and reassurance on top of the fear, what I would do in this situation, what I recommend for you, is to get a piece of paper and pen out and write out the worst case scenario. Explain your fears to yourself. Now this is not a big deal, it's just a couple of minutes work, realistically. What you'll do is you'll first write out the practicalities, what you think will happen, this after this, after this, after this, and then this. That is the worst case scenario. I also want you to write out there what you'll feel in that worst case scenario, and what you'll think about yourself and your prospects for the future, and any regrets, any thoughts about yourself and your decisions along the way if that worst case scenario comes to fruition. So that's the first part. The second part is you'll write what you'd do. If that worst case scenario came to be, then what? What would you do? How would you be okay? If those couple of steps don't resolve the problem, there is much more that we can do here, including sitting and feeling the feelings associated with your worst case scenario and much more. But that's just an abbreviated version to see if it will work for you, somewhere for you to start if this is troubling you. 3, I just want to close this video with touching on the difference between an intellectual understanding of a topic and an applied understanding of a topic. So here, I intellectually understand Parkinson's law and the benefits of it. I've actually done a lot of application of it in my life, and I've had a lot of those positive benefits from it. I've experienced it and lived in it and taken the results from executing on that concept. However, there is this misconception that this thought work is a once and done thing, as if you could just go to the gym, do one workout, and that changes your body forever. And we neglect to talk enough about the fact that this is really a daily practice. It becomes a lifestyle. Like having a fit and well physical body gets incorporated into your lifestyle, and that's the only way that it is a reality for you. Same with your brain. Your brain's an organ, another organ that needs conditioning and strengthening and maintenance. And you use your mind to condition and strengthen and maintain your brain. You use your thoughts and your brain-body connection to maintain it in good state. So although I intellectually know Parkinson's law, and I have some experience executing and benefiting from, I have some of that execution to inform my genuine, full, authentic understanding. Despite that, I still need to actively apply it again. For all of us, there are so many more concepts that we perhaps intellectually know and want to apply in our lives, but we don't do the work of applying in our lives for so many reasons. I know I have a bank of concepts and tools that I want to apply more and more to my life, but I only have so much consciousness in my day to keep redirecting and changing my brain. I'm constantly working at that as a skill too. And that's what we do a lot in coaching. Once you start to get more self-awareness and start to realize how many skills there are in emotional regulation, you'll realize that you're not going to have enough time in your lifetime. And we're always just striving towards better, not towards perfect. But there is so much to be said between the person who has the intellectual knowledge and the people who actually take the concepts and apply them to their lives. These days, knowledge is not our limiting factor. It's a social norm for us, and therefore one of most of our goals to be healthy and have a fit, healthy body, and that is what is considered healthy. Yet, how many doctors do you know in your lives who have the most physiological knowledge and also applied clinical knowledge of health? Yet, they're still overweight. People who have all the knowledge and they have the desire to be at a healthy weight and do all of those wellness activities, yet they're not. They're not executing. They have the knowledge, but they haven't crossed over that knowledge to execution gap yet. You can be different. The next book that you read, take something practical out of it and apply it. Not just once. Apply it daily for multiple weeks. And don't just stop there. Assess the impact that it's had and make a decision about whether you want to maintain that new piece of knowledge in your life. In fact, why don't we start now with this video? You can take Parkinson's Law and apply it to one thing in your week and see what results. Set a time constraint for a task that you want done and see how that affects the way that you work and your productive output. All right, my beautiful friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.